It's good to have you with us. We've got another great session lined up today. We're looking particularly at social enterprise and private sector partnerships today, and I'm delighted to be joined by a variety of speakers. And I'll just introduce what we've got coming up in the session. So we're going to start our session today hearing from Colin from WildHearts. He works as their Sales and Partnership Director. He's prepared a really practical session for us in terms of how WildHearts look at partnerships. So hopefully that will lead very well into our second speaker, which is Stuart from Barclays. Stuart's going to talk us through kind of their involvement in things like the Bisocial Corporate Challenge and the support they do to social enterprise in terms of partnership working. And then I'm delighted that for the end of our session today, we're joined by Will and Fran. Part of, I guess, talking about B Corps and partnerships that exist there and looking at some of the lessons we can learn. So Fran is with One Stone Advisors, and Will is an environmental management consultant with Green Elements. So again, lots that we can really learn from our presenters today. And I guess without wanting to hold back the session any further, we'll kick off, I guess. Colin, I'm going to pull up your slideshow ready to go, and if you've got any questions, any chat you want to pose in the Q&A as we go through, we really like these to be interactive, so feel free to join the chat and ask any questions. Thank you.
Well, thanks Naomi, and really hello and welcome to everybody to this Bisocial webinar on Wednesday morning. My name's Colin. I'm the Sales and Partnership Director at the WildHearts Group. I have been involved in the WildHearts Group's development and scale ever since day one, so I'm proud to have been involved in the business since its inception. And we have grown to become one of the largest business-to-business focused social enterprises in the UK, and my remit has, and my experience has been built in the corporate procurement environment. Now, when I often talk about corporates, our size and our scale, is often confused with the journey that we have gone on. We're not an overnight success, and WildHearts started as an idea. So anybody who's listening on today's webinar and looking for hints and tips, please be assured that we have gone on our journey, and the success that we are involved in now has been built and hard fought with really strong focus on selling products, selling services in order for us to use the profit for our stated social aims. So I've been where you are on the entrepreneur's journey, very small, and believe it or not, when we started the stationery business, WildHearts Office, which sells much more than stationery now, and I'll come on to that later, I knocked doors in Glasgow. We didn't know anything about stationery as the product, but we could see it as a vehicle to making money for us to drive our impact. So we have never seen the sales of our products as anything other than synonymous with driving impact. So the more we sell, the more that we will drive that impact. And the reason I make that point early on here is the Bisocial Corporate Challenge isn't always focused around corporates, but it is about selling products to SME and corporate businesses. So there are many practical tips I'm going to give across the next sort of 8 minutes or so. But when I show you our slides and I talk about our story, it is all to kind of illustrate the points that I'm making. And I'm hoping that some of the things that can be useful for you on your journey. Rest assured, I am available here and in this hour for chat, but at any time you can get in touch with me with LinkedIn, get my mobile number, my email details from Social Enterprise Scotland, our Social Enterprise UK, and I'll gladly give up my time to help people on their own journeys. So the reason for showing you some of this holding slide here is whether you have them or not, sometimes accreditations can be some of the most powerful ways to cut through the noise. And one of the best phrases to sort of encapsulate is borrowing credibility. Where can my business borrow credibility from if I don't necessarily always have it from a reputational perspective? So you can see we're a registered social enterprise. So, we are members of Social Enterprise UK and by default Social Enterprise Scotland. So we talk about that because lots of, medium and large scale businesses want to buy from social enterprises. So if you're registered and ratified with one of these member organizations, then, it can be a real helpful calling card. Be aware that social enterprises cover many different business models. You need to be able to talk to procurement person about how you're structured, how you deliver your impact, and what the monetary value of that impact will be. But I'll come on to that afterwards. You'll see other accreditations there. I don't need to go through all of that as well, but a couple of years ago we became a certified B Corp, and Fran is going to come on to that later. And B Corps are very useful around giving you an ability to say that you take social and environmental discussions at your heart. The United Nations Global Compact and the Meaningful Business 100, I'm going to make a specific point about that. The reason that they're on that slide is I've seen a real shift post-COVID that was, COVID has accelerated many things. It's accelerated, in my mind, two major areas: digital transformation across businesses in all its forms, and secondly, a strong focus on responsible business and sustainability outcomes. So social is only one part of the message. If you don't have a strong story to tell about sustainability and environmental impacts of your product journey, you are going to struggle to get a voice at the table when you're selling into corporates or SMEs. So I would argue that social, sustainability, and responsible business outcomes and environmental outcomes in the back of that are all really important now. You want to have a strong story there so that none of your conversations with procurement professionals become sticky. Naomi, can you move on to the next slide? So this is a snapshot of who some of our customers are. I'd have bitten your hand off for any one of those when we started this business 15 years ago. So, we use these brands because they're recognizable. And I think what's important is as you win many customers, anybody that's got a brand, you want to borrow that credibility of that brand. And the very first one that one that was really cut through the noise, both in the UK and globally from any sector, was Johnson & Johnson. And I say it with absolute respect, if we are good enough to be a supplier, the preferred supplier for office supplies into Johnson & Johnson, then somebody has to tell me in a procurement perspective why we aren't right for them. So, ultimately these brands can help establish myself outside of my conversations that we are good enough to supply into these customers. And some of them are really complicated in terms of our ability. And we could never have won them in year 1 or even year 5 of our existence. So please rest assured that our ability to win these customers now has been hard fought over many years. And you have to have the faith that you're going to get there and just be realistic about how long that journey must be. But we cannot win these customers if we're not a good supplier. And that seems like such an obvious statement. But I had a lot to learn in our early days where we were relying on third-party courier companies. Did I have the right website platform and ordering platform to be able to satisfy the complexities of some of these large corporate customers? And simple answer is no. And I didn't know that at the time. So often seeking advice and talking openly, asking as many questions as you can to procurement professionals. Am I the right supplier for you? Where do you see me fit? I'm going to leave that as a top tip later, but asking questions of your corporate customer base is so important that they'll actually give you so many hints and tips. Now might not be the time to sell into any one of these corporate businesses, but you will get there 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or 5 years. I'll tell you a quick story that some of the brands that are on here as well. RBS were, sorry Stuart for mentioning RBS, not a bit dirty word in this, but RBS were very good to us at WildHearts when we first started. And I naively just assumed we could win RBS, who were spending millions of pounds. They still spend millions and millions of pounds on office supplies, and RBS are not a customer of ours. But the help that I got from their procurement team to learn about this industry, and I was so passionate about it that what I didn't realise was I was making friends. And even if you get a knockback from a certain company and it's done politely and respectfully, it doesn't mean to say that they've forgotten you. And that team at RBS have gone on, you can see right in the middle there, LV became a customer because of someone I met in RBS. Trustpilot became a customer because of someone I met in RBS. Nationwide Building Sites, they became a customer because of somebody I met at RBS, and as did Towergate Insurance, all because I was making friends on my journey. So none of your sales knocks and setbacks at this time as you're having conversations with corporates should really dent your confidence, because if you are genuine, authentic, open and transparent, you'll be making friends for the future. Naomi, can you move on as well? We started as a stationery business, and we're often known as that, but we've diversified strongly over the years. And I think it's really important that you speak to your customers about what else can I sell you. You do not need to be wedded to one product, one service, at any point. And ultimately, you may find that actually one of the things you're trying to sell is the wrong product for your corporate or your SME market. Be open to diversification. Be open to letting competitors sell you products that might help your mission. In many ways, when you're selling in the Buy Social Corporate Challenge, you must be a capable supplier. But corporate procurement budgets, which many of you will already know, and you can see a quick snapshot on this next slide when Naomi moves it on. The focus from procurement is they want to know how much they can spend with you, and their budgets encompass sometimes millions, if not billions of pounds. Barclays, as an example, will spend billions and billions of pounds every single year on products and services. So what else can you sell people? But when you see this, how we come up with a simple algorithm about spend and profit, we can say that £5,000 spent with WildHearts transforms 20 lives through our social impact through procurement. Corporate business works on money, they work on good suppliers, and they want to know if they're going to spend £20,000 with you, how many people can you help with that money? This slide is one of the most important things you will need to come up with in your own business model to get people in procurement and in other areas of our business to listen to exactly how you can help people. And I know that this isn't easy, and I know it's harder in certain sectors than it is in others to monetize impact, but you honestly must find a way to do it if you want to be successful selling into corporates and into SMEs with your products and services. And lastly, I've left you some top tips here, which I know will be shared with people that I'll take through with you. If Naomi, if you can move on to the next slide. Often when businesses are young in the social enterprise sector, they're really passionate and they're really proud of what they do from a social or environmental business, but you have no right to a corporate business just because you are social. That's the icing on the cake. You must win fundamentally on being a good business. So genuinely, are you any good? Have you got a customer service team? Can you do good management reporting? Have you got a slick technological platform to allow large-scale orders to come in? Can you deal with POs and procurement platforms that are all electronic these days? If you can't, just be aware that selling into a big corporate might be something that's going to come to you further down the line. But you will be judged on your ability on price, quality, and service. Honestly, full stop. You can start your conversation with social, but if you're not in the right ballpark for price, okay, you can be a little bit out, but you must have great quality, you must have good service. Once you've satisfied those 3 points in capital letters, then you can talk about social again. And the social is your reason for getting a custom company to switch to you and to become a customer. SIPs, understand the SIPs process. SIPs stands for the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. Many procurement professionals are members of this chartered body, and you can do lots of online courses for free to get an idea of what SIPs professionals are thinking. You can't work in Barclays procurement if you're not a SIPs professional, and the same is true of many FTSE 350 businesses. Anybody with a SIPs accreditation is someone who you should be targeting, but try and get behind the scenes of what they're thinking. What do they want you to be as a supplier, and start working through that. You don't learn anything when you're talking. That was my granddad's best phrase to me when, as you can see, I'm pretty good at talking and not taking a breath at times. But what I've become very good at over the years is listening. So I'm not going to learn anything when you're talking. Great. So ask questions of your procurement team. Do you see me as a fundamental supplier to what it is you're trying to buy? And they might say no, actually, but I can give you a few hints and tips on how you might get there. But when you're networking, you are talking to a procurement professional. If they are too big or they're not the right company for you, they will have loads of other suppliers in their supply chain that might be smaller than them at the top, but you might be able to supply into their supply chain. So ask them for referrals. Try and get help from them to make connections. If they like your product and they like your service, but they can't buy from you, who do they know? Who can they connect with you? And who can they help you get in touch with to sell your product in other places? You really need to report your impact numbers. I went on, I talked about that before. Your numbers are really, really crucial. And once you've won some of those customers, you should create references, case studies, stories for either a website or just a simple, nicely branded PDF. It really does help open other doors. But that point there just above that, getting good at sales and business development. Sales is not a dirty word and it shouldn't be viewed as such. Sales is just getting people to come around to your way of thinking and ultimately to buy your product. And if you think they should be buying your product, then you're probably halfway to understanding what a good sales process is. But sales is a process and it is something that you can get very good at. Sales and business development are not the same thing, but they are synonymous with each other. If you get good at sales and business development, you'll watch your sales grow, then you'll be able to deliver more impact. And that's probably the best sort of top 10 tips I can give you, and probably leave that here and let Naomi bring in the next speaker for now.
Thank you, Colin. That was great, and I was really pleased actually to see the top tips slide there. I remember you sharing some of that with us at a previous presentation you did as part of a social enterprise marketplace event, and there's so many useful practical tips there, I think, for people getting started. And I'll bring in Stuart, but it was interesting. I was just reflecting on the listening one. We were running some sessions at the moment on marketing and communications boot camp, and we ran one on the elevator pitch on Monday. And actually, even in that, someone was saying, yeah, you're trying to pitch and you might have 2 minutes, but you need to listen, because if you're not listening as part of your pitch, how do you make that connection? How are you working out how you can help someone else? So I thought that was a really interesting and simple.
Yeah, Naomi, I think a good sort of rule of thumb is if you've got an hour in front of someone, you can't be talking for more than 20 minutes. You lose the attention after that. And that last 40 minutes has to be structured around questions and what the other person wants and what they can tell you, what you can learn. A phrase often uses, you've got two ears and one mouth, use them in that proportion. So think of 1 hour, and 40 minutes really should be focused on questions and answers back and forward, and don't pitch for too long. Nobody wants to listen.
Thank you. I love that, the 2 ears and 1 mouth. I'm going to put that into practice right away, and I'm going to zip my mouth, and I'm going to hand over to Stuart from Barclays, who's going to talk us, I guess, about why the corporate challenge was interesting to them, and just a little bit more about the partnerships they have within the social enterprise sector. So thank you, Stuart, and over to you.
Thanks, Naomi, and thanks, Colin. Some fantastic tips there, which you'll see how they thread into what I'm going to speak about here. So just a bit of understanding. So I'm Stuart Brown, Head of Branch and Business Banking for Barclays in Scotland, and the main representative for the interaction into the social enterprise ecosystem. So very much not directly in the procurement side, but I work very closely with them and that point between the two. On a personal basis, I'm also a trustee on a social enterprise. So I absolutely appreciate, understand, and have a vested interest in the whole environment. So I'm going to talk about 2 things here. One is the Buy Social Corporate Challenge, and the other aspect is in terms of corporates supporting social enterprises and their growth. And Colin touched on some of those really important things about learning from the corporates as you go along, which crosses over in both those. So firstly, in terms of the Buy Social Corporate Challenge, well, this is a key thing at the minute. There's a great boot camp going on at the moment by Social Enterprise Scotland. So if you're not already engaged and benefiting from that, I would strongly encourage you to get in about and learn all these things that will help you with what Colin was speaking about. But doing business with corporates is something that can help social enterprise significantly grow, increase their social benefit, but at the same time, it helps the corporates improve their supply chain impact. The Year 4 2020 Buy Social Corporate Challenge, I'll shorten it to BSCC, so I have to keep saying that, but their recent 4-year report published a few weeks ago highlighted a big step up in activity over the course of the last 12 months, with almost £100 million now spent by corporates with social enterprise over those 4 years since it was launched. And the social enterprise suppliers are now at 380 into 24 corporates. And that started off with 7 corporates at the start and into 24 now, and has grown, almost doubled in terms of the amount of social enterprises over the last 12 months. And it's really getting to that, Colin spoke there about a credible position for social enterprises. So you can see the volume of social enterprise and the volume money spent is really creating that credible position for social enterprises. if they are set up properly. And that comes back to what Colin was saying there. It's all about you need to have your platform correct to be able to do stuff now, or learn how to get that in place for doing business at the appropriate time. So it's absolutely key. But one of the most satisfying things is in that report is 100% of the corporates felt the quality of offering was at least equal, if not better, than mainstream competitors. You know, that is a really strong statement to come out. 78% were cost neutral or cheaper. So there's very few barriers for corporates and lots of reasons in terms of that societal impact, sustainability, etc., that makes it the right reason to be doing things. And it's just, so working together is just as important for corporates as it is for social enterprise. It's not about CSR activity. For a corporate, it provides supplier diversity to reflect their customer base and the communities that they work in and their employees, you know, live in. There is the positive societal impact, which again, why, again, as Colin emphasised, it's really important to get that message across of what that does. An improved sustainable supplier base. Remember what I said about 100%, said the quality was there. And very often innovation that's, you know, smaller social enterprises can pull into play that larger mainstream competitors can't, because they're trying to service so many volume of different customers. For social enterprise, it's all about the learning journey and engaging and meeting the procurement requirements of corporates, and touching on some more that's already been discussed. If you've been through that once, you know how to do it. You can evidence it. And that will definitely open more doors because your quality and delivery is proven. And businesses who you're looking to service will be comfortable knowing, yeah, you've done. You'll look at that slide with all those great companies that WildHearts have sold into, and that's you know, that's a great position to be in. And it provides scale growth for social enterprises. 96% of those 380 suppliers that I spoke about earlier see growth in their business in the next 12 months, you know, working with those corporates. And for SE, for social enterprise, it's also good to focus on the supplier nature as opposed to CSR. I said it's not all about CHR. You know, as mentioned, there's billions spent on procurement. It's significantly more than the CSR budgets. And CSR budgets, there will be lots of different people vying for that. So focus on that sustainable supply to a corporate. From a Barclays perspective, we are really strong supporters of social enterprises. We're members of Social Enterprise Scotland, as well as Social Enterprise UK. And this year we became one of the 24 corporates signed up to BSCC, and only one of two banks that are in there at the moment. And I'm sure there are many more corporates will join that journey over the course of the next 12 months. You know, it was interesting, you Colin was speaking there about your post-COVID, what's the impact of post-COVID has been digital transformation. It's also been that sustainability, resilience. You know, how can we support that? And so we've got significant, as you can imagine, Barclays, huge global business, but huge business in the UK with branches and corporate offices. And we're working hard to ensure that we identify and use social enterprises who can provide that quality and delivery of service and goods that we need. And we've gone that step further to ensure that the documentation that is required is simplified to help with that social enterprise supplier journey. So, you know, rather than stack all this high, it's reducing that to make sure it's manageable to work with a social enterprise. You know, from a Scotland and a local perspective, many of you will be aware that we are building a new campus in Glasgow, which will be one of only 5 worldwide, and it will accommodate up to 5,000 people when it completes over the next 18 months. So we Barclays and the procurement partners are extremely keen to see what social enterprise we can get involved in terms of when that becomes operational and we can put everything in place, a wide range of services and goods. In addition, there's also the opportunity to sell to those staff that will be on site, but also to the general public, because there's various retail catering offering services that we will have on site for people. So if there's any social enterprises out there that believe they have an offering and they would really like to work with us in terms of that Glasgow campus, then reach out to us via email, socialbusiness@barclays.com, search on Google Barclays Supplier Diversity. That's our main portal into the supplier chain. Or directly to myself, which you'll find through Social Enterprise Scotland members page, LinkedIn, or Twitter @Stuart Brown BRCL. And then the other way that corporates can help social enterprise is that once they know you and your service, can introduce you to other corporates or businesses that they do business with, because they know how great an offering that you provide, and hand that on. If you don't ask, you don't get. So back to that, keep interacting, keep networking, keep asking. From a Barclays perspective, we've got over 1 million business customers across the UK. So us showcasing working with social enterprise could certainly catch the eye of some of those. And personally, I'd be delighted to introduce a social enterprise who I've seen as doing a good job for us or for somebody else, so they can develop, because that's a win for everybody, all sides of the triangle. The other aspect is, from a Barclays perspective, we look to help social enterprises in them starting up and in their growth journey. We've got 30 pioneers across the UK who are specifically upskilled in understanding of social enterprises. When I started really getting into social enterprises a couple of years ago, a lot of the feedback was, well, yeah, banks don't really understand social enterprises. So it takes people to take time and understand that. We've invested in that to make sure our people understand what that's all about, and help them, whether it's banking services, whether it's guidance and signposting, business advice, digital advice, that digital transformation. We've got a huge element to help people, which is freely available, to help people upskill on that digital journey and digital transformation, or introductions, as I've outlined before. In the last 2 years, we've worked with Firstport in supporting their Launch Me programme, and we have a UK-wide partnership with Ethical Angel, who social enterprises can go to and seek some help with various things that they might need, whether that's marketing, governance, etc. So I'd just like to kind of finish off by encouraging people to look at what I've spoken about, what Colin's spoken about, and you'll hear more from Will and Fran, just about getting invested into that, understanding it, setting themselves up right, and reach out to the people on the webinar, Social Enterprise Scotland, and various other entities, because they're all there to help you along that journey. With that, Naomi, I'll pass back to you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. That was great, and it's good to hear that there's potentially opportunities there. I think with the new campus in Glasgow, and there is lots of support out there in the social enterprise sector for those that want a bit more of that support. And I guess it's always coming back to that comments that Colin made about finding the right customer for yourself, and what's the scale, and getting that right as well. But it's encouraging to know that those opportunities are really out there. So thank you very much. I'm conscious that we leave enough time for questions coming towards the end, so I'm going to hand straight over now to Will and Fran, who are just going to share a bit of their experience, more I guess coming from the B Corp sector, but we know there's lots of lessons that we can learn about partnerships there. So I think, Will, you're going to start us off.
I'll be as quick as I can. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I guess let's just go straight into the fact that companies that practice conscious capitalism perform 28 times better. Just remember that. It's really, really important. And people are actioning sustainability and the environment at this very moment in time, almost more so than ever, even though many businesses are and organizations are struggling. The conversations have become less vague and much more actionable, and organizations are actually wanting to reduce their environmental impact and improve their sustainability journey, therefore ensuring they have much more of an impact. Going through B Corp, it's there are 4 different pillars that B Corp sit on, and that's governance, workers, community, and the environment, of which there are a variety of different aspects to those pillars. So with governance, you're looking at mission engagement, corporate accountability and transparency. With regards to the community, you're looking at job creation, diversity, inclusion, civic engagement and giving, local involvement in suppliers, distributors and products. And when you're looking at workers and your colleagues, we're looking at compensation and wages and what benefits do you have, training, education, worker ownership, management and worker communication. And then last but not least, the environmental side. So you're looking at all aspects of your organization, how you're reducing your environmental impacts. That B Corp impact assessment is massively powerful to be able to understand what impact you have as an organization. And as you can see, it really does incorporate all parts of your organization. I'm going to hand over to Fran now, who is going to talk about
Hi everyone, so I'm Fran van Dijk and I founded a B Corp called One Stone Advisors, and in fact we were the first certified B Corp in Scotland, so we've been doing this since 2013. But I don't want to talk about B Corp specifically, more about the values behind it and why sharing values makes partnership really easy and they make partnerships with other companies work really, really well. Colin mentioned right at the beginning that don't be frightened of your competitors. Don't shy away from your competitors. Engage with them. Find out how you can cooperate with them. Find out what they can do better than you and hand that work over to them. Will and I have worked together for a number of years now, and this year we formed a partnership with a bunch of B Corps. There's 5 of us all together. Now, individually, each of those companies had worked together in one form or another, but we decided to formalize it and make a group called the Impact Advisors Group. Why did we do that? Number one, we want to make impact happen at scale. I actually work with some very big corporates in my company, but generally on quite narrowly defined projects. Big companies are now very interested in changing their corporate culture to be have much more positive impact and much less negative impact. And the B Corp impact assessment that we use and know, as well as our own skills as service companies who help move companies in the right direction, is a really good tool for those big companies to use. As a group, as B Corp, as the B Impact Advisors Group, we are able to make change happen at a much larger scale because we can take on those huge multinationals and make culture change happen from within. And I really recommend that you, as social enterprises with your shared values, think about working together on stuff as well. You can make more impact happen that way. So I wanted to tell you some of the good things that happened this year. I know that many of you are having a very hard time, and that those of you that perhaps aren't digitally focused have found it harder than those that are. We were very ballsy and we launched Impact Advisors Group in April. It was kind of brave thing to do, but it went down really well. We got loads of interest. Not only that, we have now been selected to be placed on a platform by the charity that oversees all the B Corps to enable large corporates to engage with specialists like us. So through having the courage, if you like, of growing together, building a website, deciding what our corporate approach was, we now have access to a much huger marketplace throughout Europe. So there's another idea for you in terms of the benefits of getting together, pulling together, coordinating around having bigger impact. I'm going to leave it there for now. Clearly, we're going to have bumps in the road, but I just wanted to give you a flavour of some of the good things that can happen from partnership.
Thank you, Fran. That was great. And I think, you know, that launch, I guess, or that coming together and that sense of collaboration in terms of opening up to perhaps bigger markets as individual organisations you don't necessarily have access to is quite interesting. And I think I look in the context of our whole session today, and obviously I think Colin started out by saying, you know, WildHearts didn't start out by being able to sell into the big corporate straight away. That came over time and building up a reputation. So I think that sense of coming together in the early days to perhaps build that sense of scale can be really important for groups on the ground. I'm just going to encourage people, if they've got questions, to kind of start posting those through. And I don't know if our other presenters want to just come back in if there's any questions. We'll get them in as they come through, so that's great. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Stuart. I guess perhaps it comes back to the comment I was just making about Fran was talking about getting together to almost use collaboration and open up access to new markets. Is your experience that that's what the corporate challenge, I guess, has done in terms of social enterprises, and how's that been perceived? I'll put the question to Stuart. Has the corporate challenge been a way that you've seen social enterprises look to collaborate and come together to perhaps make engagement easier with you as a larger corporate?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a cliche, but it is a bit of a journey, because people will start off and think they can service directly into corporate, and then find out, well, we're not quite ready there because there's lots of requirements to meet. And it might be a case of, it might be a volume perspective or a geographical coverage perspective that they can't do on their own, and therefore you see them tying up with others. Or the corporate may well see there's a number, well, we're not convinced you can do it directly yourself, but however, we've seen somebody else here, that perhaps the two of you go away, or two or three or whatever, is go away and pull that together and come back to it and see about the delivery. So I think that a lot of it is that individual piece, the individual business has been able to service that, but again, it's the power, often it's more than the power of one that can help deliver. So I think there's certainly evidence of that, and I'm sure Colin's probably seen that as well.
Well, that leads me nicely. I was going to perhaps ask Colin, I mean, obviously WildHearts have now got a reputation, and like you say, you've got the customers that I guess helps your own sales force to some degree once you've got those logos like you were talking. How have you found the corporate challenge in that sense of social enterprises coming together? Has that helped WildHearts in terms of creating more opportunities, or were you fortunate that you were there anyway, I guess, in terms of having access to those markets?
I would say we were there anyway to a degree to having access to those markets, but the phone doesn't ring off the hook. You need to make approaches, you need to network, you need to find the right person. Barclays Procurement, I guess probably got 100 people working in it, and I need to find probably 2 of those 100. It's just because procurement's in the title doesn't mean that person's responsible for the products and services that I sell. So coming back to that tip about that SIPS process, understanding how procurement works was key, and I've learned that. I haven't gone to school to learn about procurement. I didn't go to school or university to be the Tipex guy selling stationery, but it's interesting how you can sell anything, a product and service, and make money at what you do with the profit is interesting. I'll touch on partnerships, though, is important. 3 things. The Buy Corporate Social Challenge, there you've got a whole list of corporates to go and start asking questions to. They have opened their doors to be having discussions, but don't necessarily assume that they are going to spend all their money with social enterprises. Again, it comes back to price and quality and service, but a lot of their reasons for joining the challenge can also be political, CSR-led, PR-led, and I say that with absolute respect. There's a lot of kudos for joining a challenge like that, but it doesn't mean to say every penny that Barclays spend is going to be able to be spent with social enterprises. So you've got to find your niche and the right customers for you. One of our greatest successes was collaborating with 2 of our competitors, direct competitors, when we were smaller, because they were much bigger than us. They had more money, they had more vans, they had more resources, they had more warehouse. They could help meet a price point that we couldn't because we weren't big enough. But our message could take them to places that they couldn't even dream of getting to. And I could take contracts at times from under their nose because of what we were doing with the profit. So we were a threat to them, and they were an advantage to us. And actually, if you meet in the middle of that, and I know Fran went straight to that point, don't always be scared of your competitors, actually. They might be one of your most powerful collaborators. We would not be where we are today if we hadn't joined forces with two of our competitors. And I'll happily chat through that in more detail with people offline, because it seems on one hand counterintuitive, but it has been it's been the most powerful element of our success. Thirdly, you don't get to the top of the ladder by stepping over people who are already on there. I think it's dead important for social enterprises to come together, but we're not all equal. Humans weren't born equal. Social enterprises aren't all equal. We don't operate all in the same places. So try not to be distracted. It's a good bit of advice, just like find the right partners who are willing to work with you in the right space. There's loads of social enterprises doing some amazing stuff in water treatment, okay? Nothing to do with us. I applaud them. I'm going to struggle to come up with a partnership, around that. But we have a small social competitor in the social enterprise UK space out of London, who've got an ethical stationary angle. And, they don't compete with us. They're not working at the same level of us, but they have got a great knack of getting environmentally sustainable products sourced from places. So we buy them from them and put them into our customer base. We've got collaborative partnerships with Blue Water, Change Please Coffee, where we tell our corporates, stop buying XYZ water, stop buying XYZ coffee, and buy the social enterprise product. But rest assured, at the level and volume that we have to sell into our customers at, we can only select partners that have got an ability to produce high volume product repeatedly, and with, ultimately with consistent supply chains. And we've had our fingers burned there as well. So we've got to learn a little bit as well about when we collaborate with the right social enterprise suppliers, are they capable of working with our customers? They're capable of working with us, no worries, but can they get consistent supply? And that's quite important too. So partnerships are great. Go and find them, seek them, be innovative. They will rarely let you down. But if you smell a rat and you don't have aligned social focus, you'll probably get distracted and waste a fair bit of time and possibly money along the way.
Thank you, Colin. Again, some great tips there. And I think we're always encouraged, or not always encouraged, because you've just done the opposite of that, but we often think about, when you think of competition, you're always thinking, how are we better? Actually thinking, how can we work with you, might be a different question to ask when looking at competition. And again, that sense of, it's something I've often told enterprises before is, and I'd be interested to know a perspective on this from a sales point of view, because you're a salesman and I'm not, I guess. But, that sense of you win sales by showing what you're good at and meeting the quality, not by telling people how other people can't do what you do. So focus on what you're good at. Don't focus on negative stories is something I often tell people. And I think, I don't know whether you've got any top tips around that, Colin.
It's probably in sales book 101, never sit and disrespect your competitors. Just makes you look churlish, petty, and you are better than them. Don't worry about that, you are better than them. I think the social aspect, really, most people are very passionate about the social aspect of their business, so you can let that social bit come through, but it will always come down to price, quality and service broadly. I mean, how often do people spend, let's take coffee for example, and I've talked to this about Change Please. You might spend £1 more on your coffee in the supermarket, but you won't spend £2 often just to go fair trade. At the corporate level, it can become quite cutthroat. There's all sorts of things with rebates and different ways of selling your services. So it's not all about price. It really isn't about price, but certainly be passionate about your product. But price, quality and service are the three things that any business relies on. And I think what I was naive to, but the SIPS course that I paid to do a SIPS course so that I could understand what procurement professionals were thinking. What I was naive to in the early days was no business is successful without successful suppliers. And I was walking in with my social story, my passionate story, and I had a fair expectation that people were going to listen to that. They did listen to it, and I was competitive in price, but I still had no right to their business because they had an incumbent supplier in certain disciplines for 5, 10, 15 years. And I was asking people to stop trusting that relationship and trust me, and that's a risk. And risk is probably the second most important word to procurement professional. Price, cost effectiveness and risk. So you be aware that you could be viewed as risky. Okay, and even at our size, and I'll say, double-digit millions now, Barclays might view us as risky, right? Because they're billion-pound organisation. Now, actually, we're not in the specific nature of stationery for Barclays, but for other strategic reasons, I don't know that I want Barclays business, and that's a conversation for another time. You just got to know who your customer is, and where you can win business is probably the most important things.
Yeah, no, I think that understanding risk is really important. The same, I think, has come up when we've done sessions about working with local authorities. Who they contract with is a risk on them. Maybe it's a risk on votes rather than on profits, but it's still who they contract with is looked at from that risk perspective as much as anything else. So there's quite a few questions come in, and I'm just going to try and pick up on a few of those. I'm hopeful you can't hear my dogs barking in the background. That's a risk of running live webinars. So they've run upstairs, so I think we're okay now. And perhaps one of the questions that's come in is again using that word risk. So in terms of risks that you faced as a social enterprise, and I'll move on to someone else for questions in a second, Colin, but given that one's a social enterprise one, what risks have you faced? And I was going to ask as well, are there any kind of mistakes that you think you made in the early days when you were trying to grow WildHearts that you think would just be some top nuggets of advice in terms of for those organisations at an earlier stage?
Probably covered them, just assuming that everybody was going to buy from me, which is great, being passionate and having boundless energy, but at corporate level, and I'm talking spends to, 50,000, 100,000 plus, up to the millions. And, you don't have the right to anybody's business until you prove yourself. Second thing is understanding procurement life cycles. Often contracts are 3 years, 5-year cycles. And I remember one of our competitors who grew from about £100 million to £200 million across 10 years. And I was like, how did you grow 100? That'll never happen in our industry again, by the way. But at a particularly unique time, and they said to me that they never really won at the first time of asking. So it was when the contract life cycle came around year 4 and year 6, they've been speaking to that company for 5-6 years. We've just won a business that we've been speaking to for 9 years. So they remember me from the plucky, early, confident days. I'm still plucky and confident, right? But you never stop talking. So I've been sending them our impact report every year. I've been inviting them to the events. You've got to keep things warm. It can take years to land a corporate contract. So if I was looking at our active pipeline right now, me and my team, it's 4 of us, I reckon we've got 450 live conversations on the go.
Wow.
Okay, and we won't win 450 customers this year, but it's just a huge pipeline of conversations all the time. Simple tip: pitch like you mean it. Every pitch, you can't be bored. I sell WildHearts today as passionately as I sell it 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But everybody's a new customer. They've got to feel your enthusiasm and why you do it. And risks, I'm not a risky supplier anymore, but one of the ironies of being a social enterprise is you give all your profit away. So it's rare to get an excellent credit rating because you can't build any reserves because you use them for your social gain. So head that off at the pass. In those early days, I didn't realize that people were good, they were checking out our credit risk, and I wasn't aware of preempting that objection. So computer was saying no before I'd even got halfway through the conversation. So, if you are small and you haven't got years of credibility behind you, be aware that research will be happening when you're not at the table, and understand how you look when you're not there controlling the conversation. And I mean that from a financial perspective.
I knew you'd be full of lots of practical tips, and that was another one. So thank you. I'm going to see if I can bring, I hope it's not putting you on the spot. Will, you started your presentation with what was quite a powerful stat, and I didn't quite get it written down, but what you talked about it was a percentage that you put in terms of businesses and thriving and looking at it in this kind of broader perspective.
Yeah, basically, if you're a purpose-driven business, you are going to do better than others. And we know that organizations are now looking at mitigating risk in their supply chain, and purpose is a part of that risk in a positive way rather than a negative way. And companies and organizations that are not looking at their purpose and looking at what it is that they're doing and the impact they have on the environment and sustainability as a whole are not going to be existing in, 20, 30, 40 years time. That's a bit of a finger in the air, but which holds really good stead to the audience here and social enterprise full stop, because you're all doing it for the right reasons, and therefore you've almost got over the first initial barrier.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. There's a book I read a few years ago called it's all about the sustainability advantage by a Canadian called Bob Williard, which I thought was a really interesting book. And I guess coming back to Colin's point about you shouldn't just assume the social stories, what wins a contract. You've got to meet the quality. You've got to be able to do the basics of actually what someone's asking for. But if you understand where those additional advantages come from, that's part of your story. And I guess on that, I wanted to bring Stuart in terms of, we're very much used to working with social enterprises that I guess have that passion, they have that drive, the same with the B Corps, in terms of we're in this and we've set up businesses in a very particular way because we want to make a difference. How much do you think, Stuart, people should bring that in their conversations, or would you always encourage them to start with what it is that they're trying to sell as the product that the business wants rather than their story, and how do they get that balance right? Are there any tips from yourself on that?
I think it's a really good question, because if you're sitting there, one, you want to understand what they do, but the real differentiator is that passion piece, and what they've been able to achieve and then the passion that behind it. So certainly from a personal perspective, whenever I meet a business, now whether that's a mainstream business or a social enterprise, it's the passion and the ambition and what they're doing about it that really makes the difference to say, yeah, okay, I get this. And they can then speak to me about the most boring product or service in the world, but if they've got the passion and they've got the vision, then you can buy into it. It's then that challenge back to state, that's fantastic, you have a passion, but do you have the rest of the platform in place to be able to make success? So we're speaking about risk earlier on, and again, it was being talked about, it is one of the biggest things I've seen with social enterprises is they're built up from that passion piece. Somebody's got an idea, they've got a passion to do it, and they drive it forward. But the business skills aren't always necessarily there to create a sustainable business. So it's all about then taking that to the next level and say, okay, how do I get those? And obviously, fantastic. It sounds like a sales plug here, but everything that the Scottish Enterprise, Scotland Social Enterprise does with the boot camps and everything is a huge upskilling element of it. And it's mentoring as well. Find that mentor piece or a group of mentors that can help you along that journey, because putting everything in place. And I remember we did various social mentoring sessions across the whole of the UK, and a very common theme coming through was governance in a business, and and marketing was another. Those were two key things coming through. All those things you have to put in place if you want to be a real scalable, sustainable business.
Thank you. And I'm conscious, obviously, Fran, you'll probably have a perspective on that from the B Corp side. Again, they're businesses that have set up with a very particular framework in mind. How much do they kind of use the sustainability advantage in terms of talking about themselves, and how much do you think just meeting the basic requirements of what someone wants to actually buy or purchase comes into it? Are there any good examples you can share with us from the B Corp sector?
The B Corp, the sector is as varied as social enterprise sector. So we have everything from people who make stuff, from food to stationery, and people who sell services, and people who offer ethical investment, for instance. So it really, really varies the sector that you come from. But I come from an advisory sector, and so my head is the first thing I think is, look, ESG or sustainability is business critical and mission critical to corporates. There is no question that that legislation is coming down the line. There's something called the green taxonomy that's coming from Europe, which is incredibly powerful. financial institutions are going to have to be reporting on how much of their investments are in the green taxonomy and how much are out. Within short shrift, apparently it's March 2021, but it's just been pushed back. That might not seem important, that might seem too distant, but what it means is that every company that those organizations are invested in will have to report how green they are in order for the investors to be able to make a call to invest in them. So it's phenomenally important, because that then continues down the line to the suppliers for those companies, because they're looking at their footprint. So as a social enterprise working in the social and environmental space, and as a B Corp, proving that we have positive social and environmental impact through the way we measure our impact and report it transparently, we all have an advantage, and we are therefore lower risk for those companies as providers than those who can't show those things. It's a huge advantage. Use it.
Yeah, and really take that time to look ahead in terms of what is that legislation that's coming. Don't wait for it to be in force and then react to it, because people will already be in by that stage. So be prepared for that now, I guess, is the other thing that's critical.
Absolutely, and the other thing I'd like to emphasise, building on what others have said, is when I go after a new client, and I tend to go after big clients for quite a chunky piece of work, I spend a huge amount of time researching that client. I do not make a call to them until I know pretty much everything I can find out online about them. And it's only, and I have a really clear idea in my mind about the way I may be able to help. So I'm proactive about how I might be able to help them. And then on to Colin's point, then I listen. So really put the upfront effort in. If you want a client, do your homework. Don't arrive without having prepared.
Yeah, I always think, if you were going for a job interview, you'd research an employer. If you're doing a sales pitch, really research who you're pitching into, know something about them. Don't wait to be told, and I guess understand some of that. I'm just looking through my questions. And one had disappeared. I think it's because it's been answered, which is great. I was encouraging people to respond on the chat. So it's a practical one again, just about someone was asking about memberships, and I think we talked about that credibility, and I guess being part of the B Corp movement comes in here, as well as some of the ones Colin was talking about. But are there any top memberships or accreditations that you would really say to people, actually really try and engage with that one, and that's worth having? Or is it just that people need to think about their customers and use those as part of the accreditation? So are there any just top tips perhaps from I guess any of the panel? Start with Colin maybe.
You don't always have to pay to have an affiliation with a certain accredited network. So the UN Global Compact is actually at the lower tier. It's free. You're basically pledging to make environmental and sustainable decisions as part of every part of your governance, and you sign up to that. Resource Efficient Scotland is quite an interesting one, where we got loads of free advice about how we could make our business more sustainable, environmental metrics, how we, it's simple, a big corporate company wants to know what your electricity usage has been for the last 3 years. You ever recorded that? In those early days, I was like, how am I supposed to record all that? And ultimately, Resource Efficient Scotland helped us put timers on our lights and standby switches on our computers, and all of a sudden we've got a narrative to answer that question to corporates. Especially if you're smaller, SE UK and Social Enterprise Scotland, they're freemium entry level memberships, and you get full access to all the opportunities. I'm not religious, but seek and ye shall find. The more I spoke to people, the more doors opened for us in the early years, and people are prepared to listen if you're passionate and you stop them in the street and you have a chat to them. So I think you've got to be bold and try and get out there and meet an awful lot of people, and you'll be amazed the journey that you'll go on, whether it's with a large affiliation or not. Use people, use them wisely, be authentic, and people know hundreds of other folk. It's amazing who you can be connected to just by asking.
Thank you. And Fran or Will, perhaps anything practical to add to that from your perspective?
Well, I can tell you that when we first became a B Corp, it was no advantage at all, apart from the fact that we were aligned from a values perspective, because the B Corp community was so small and B Corp wasn't very well heard of in the UK or Europe. but it's growing exponentially, and now there's an internal market, people are selling to each other, there's opportunities for collaboration, like with Impact Advisors Group, there's now a platform reaching out right across Europe. So don't be frightened. If something feels right, if an affiliation feels right, but at the moment it doesn't have very much impact, but it fits you like a glove, go for it, because if it's good for you, it's going to be good for other people, it'll probably grow, and so will your influence in it, and the benefits you can get from it.
No.
And if I could just add something that Colin said that I thought was really interesting and so true, was collaborate with competitors. We run a weekly podcast and we talk to our competitors about what they're doing, and that has helped us grow and nurture relationships with many people. I mean, if you're in it for long enough, you end up becoming friends with your competitors because you're all doing it for the same reason anyway. So it's actually quite nice because you end up chatting about it. And let's face it, one person doesn't buy off only one person. We all have relationships with different types of people, and so it really does help.
No, thank you, Will. Again, just really practical advice for people that's coming through. I'm conscious we're at our kind of 12:30 mark, and I know people tend to drop off sometimes in terms of questions. So I'm just wondering if there's any final comments that we wanted to really come back to before we close today's session. I think there's a few questions been answered in the chat, so I'm hopeful I don't need to come back to those. But if you're still burning to ask a question, it's your last minute to post it. And I'm just going to, while we're doing that, just ask, if you were to give the one top tip, what would that one top tip be? And I'll start with Will. You're not unmuted, so I'll start with you for your one top tip.
Look around you and see who else is in your space and just phone them up and talk to them.
Thank you, Will. Colin, you're unmuted, so I'll come to you next.
You don't need to buy social corporate challenge to sell your product to small, medium or corporate business. Pick up the phone to any procurement department. They're all spending money, and go and find out who your customers are.
Thank you, Colin. Fran?
Yeah, I'd say that the next trend is that SMEs, private sector SMEs, are going to be looking at this space very, very hard. It's previously been the large corporates. Have a good look at the larger SMEs and see what you can sell them.
Thank you. And Stuart, a tip from your perspective?
I think it's about being prepared, relay what your impact is, and you look at that wider, as some other the panelists have said, look at that wider environment, not just at the corporates, but wider across SMEs. Everybody needs those services, and the services are just as valuable to anybody.